when we were working on movie stuff, we would not be recording.
Right.
And we would be walking into somebody's place,
right.
and they would be telling the craziest story.
Right.
And we were getting in there like, why were we not recording?
Yeah,
So then I basically bought this, right? So I had my GoPro on here, and I had my recorder on here.
Yeah.
That joint on here.
Right.
So I was walking in, and I had my second guy, my assistant that was the cameraman, just filming. Yeah. So even it's not the best video, but you're getting like somebody's telling the craziest story.
You're not missing it.
As soon as you walk in, just turn that on.
Yeah.
Even if it's just on that joint.
Yeah. That's what's up.
That's my podcasting tip for the day.
There it is.
Always record.
Yeah, y'all. So we back again, man. It's your boy DJ Klyph with another episode of DJ Klyph Presents. And, once again, this podcast is brought to you by no one. So if you're trying to get down, hit a brother up.
We got to get some good local sponsor, like
the mic stand place.
Sizzle Pie.
Sizzle Pie will be.
Hi, I'm DJ Zimmie. Klyph asked me to be on his podcast, so we're sitting in my kitchen drinking coffee. Klyph doesn't even drink coffee, but he had heard other people drinking coffee, so he said, "Why don't you just make me a cup?"
It's because see, louder than words. I listen to extra credit with DJ Zimmie, and I've always heard about the science of the Zimmie cup of coffee. So I was like, well, I have to experience it.
There's a science to everything.
It's very funny, dude. It's so cool to be doing this because I said to you that you've been influential in me doing a podcast, which is really, so it's kind of surreal to be here recording you.
It's cool, man. I'm happy you did it. I had a lot of people that hit me up and asked me for advice, and I'll give them some, and then they never take it, and then they'll ask me for more, and then I don't give. I'm like, well, like I have a friend that was like, what are you listening to? Like I've been listening to a lot of this, so I gave her one record. I was like, get this one record, and then like 6 months later, she asked me for something again. I was like, well, what did you think of that thing?
Right.
And she didn't listen to it, and I'm not going to give her like you. I gave you homework, you didn't do it, so you don't get any more homework. So like it's cool you did it, and we were just talking about gear, and
exactly.
Yeah.
So this I kind of our history. You've been doing your thing for a minute. I reached out to you for the radio show for Welcome to the Neighborhood, and I was like, yo, I'm doing this. Love to have you come on. And you were like, bet, when, where, what time, I'll be there, just like that. And I think you did the show twice.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, you did it twice, and it might have even been the first time. You didn't even come solo.
Who did I came with Excel and Impulse one time.
And pizza.
Yeah. See? Pizza sponsors, where you at?
Just like that, man. And it was sort of, that night was one of the nights where we had done a 2-hour radio show. We were done, and we ended up hanging out in the studio and talking for like another hour. Yeah. And I felt like, man, this is like...
That's the magic.
Yeah. And if I could capture that and share that with the masses, and so that really kind of sparked the idea. And then I heard extra credit, and I was like, I want to be like Zimmie. I want to do a podcast.
Yeah, man. I think there's a real market for it now because I think a lot of people, number one, are not really writing liner notes, or maybe are not making music that would even require liner notes. Like there's no stories behind the record anymore because nobody's really putting a lot of time and effort into records. So I think there's definitely, like I love listening to podcasts and they talk to musicians and comedians and actors and just people that tell the story behind the thing. But I also think there's maybe a little bit of a gap in the music market for interesting music.
Right.
I'm not saying music that you like, but there's always music that you like, but there might not be something that's like, this is really interesting and I want to pick it apart. Whereas I want my brain to be stimulated. So sometimes just listening to two people talk that I think is interesting. Cool.
Yeah. I know wifey's been laughing at me because I've been telling her, man, I found this new podcast. She's like, yeah, I know you're in the podcast now. So now I'm driving around in my car listening to.
I mean, I'm on my old man steez anyway. So like podcasts, I have a lot of routines. So my breakfast routine is when I'm making breakfast and kind of cleaning up is like, I try to knock out a couple, like whatever podcasts I'm working on and audiobooks are kind of happening too, which
no doubt.
which is cool because I got to do a lot of work around the house. Or I got to do something that I can't. I got to use my hands.
Yeah.
And that's the best. Like if you got to do something for an hour,
Right.
just throw on a book because I don't have time to sit there all the time.
Right.
So yeah,
Exactly. So people are gonna know who you are. Obviously, world famous. World traveling
no,
DJ.
I don't know why that's not happening.
But you're in Portland right now, but you're not from here.
I'm from Pittsburgh originally.
How'd you get to Portland from like literally the other side of the country?
Oh, okay. So, well, first off, look, because some people have ADD and they're only going to listen for 9 minutes and then whatever. If you're in Portland, couple things coming up. I don't know when this is coming out, but March 8th at Hawthorne Theater, DJ Premier and Royce the 5'9" have a new project called Prime. I highly recommend the album. They're playing at Hawthorne Theater on March 8th. I'll be opening up for them, so come see that. And other cool stuff's on my website, so check that out. And yesterday was Dre Day, and I put out Cutso and I put out a remix for that. So grab that. We did a cool 8-bit Nintendo remix of Nothing But a G Thing. So go to my site and check all that stuff out. Anyways, now we got all that out of the way.
Whoa, you can't just say go to my site. What is the site?
DJZimmie.com, Zimmie, and you can follow all my social media from there, and there's links to the website for the documentary I'm making and other stuff like that. So, and we'll get into that later.
Exactly. And sidebar, yes, March 8th, Hawthorne Theater, DJ Zimmie, opening for Prime. Serge Severe is also going to be there. Some of you will be there. Go get tickets now. So I'm going to make sure this is up before March 8th. But I'm also going to say, go get tickets, because go get tickets. But if you listen to Welcome to the Neighborhood on X-Ray FM, I'm giving away tickets.
Oh, see.
Shout out to Rev Shines, Colton Tone. I just gave away a pair of tickets this week. So, we take care of the people.
Yeah.
That's why you listen to podcasts, so you know that.
There hasn't been a lot of albums that have come out recently that, number one, I liked the majority of the record. And also, it stayed on repeat, but that was an album that, I really liked 85% of it, yeah. and I it's been in this playlist that I have that'll just keep going through. So
no doubt,
yeah.
Doubt.
What were we talking about?
How you got Portland?
Oh, okay, yeah, good point. I go off on tangents, which is why you can't use a notepad. You got to have like you ask one question, you could go for an hour or so.
Well, these are just things that I know that I have to
might
about.
Cover. Okay,
exactly.
Okay. I was living in Pittsburgh, and I put out a mix in, I think, 2007, called Realer Than the Logo on Milk. And Lee Feldman.
Shout out to Lee Feldman.
Yeah, was working for, I think, Spectre at the time, and he was kind of servicing music to people and checking out mixtapes. And the mix ended up on a blog somewhere. This was like back in the day when there were literally five blogs. Like I've had this conversation with people, like if you were getting music, it was from like Certified Bananas, or there was like 5 things, Roxy Cottontail's blog or something like that. So he hit me up and was like, hey, I have to listen to mixes all day, and most of them are crap, and I think this is really cool, and I run this party. Would you be interested in coming out and playing? He's like, we don't have a lot of money. And at that point, I hadn't really begun traveling and DJing at all. Yeah. And I wanted to come to Portland. I heard it was cool. I was dating a girl at the time that wanted to come, and, this party was at Tube on a Tuesday, and he's like, we got like $200 or something. And I was like, sure. So me and my girl flew out, and we totally crashed at Lee's house, and the party went great, and we had a good time. And, we thought it was, I'm from the East Coast, and if you grow up around here, it's like you don't really appreciate how awesome Portland is. It's very clean and very eccentric and very it has thriving music and food and art and culture scenes. So we were like, oh, this is great. Yeah. So I think like 6 months later, Lee hit me up again and was like, hey, now I'm doing this new party and I have a little bit more money. Yeah. And that was when he started doing Massive at Crown Room, which was like first Saturday of the month or something. And he's like, would you like to come back out? And I think I did like Massive, and then I did Tube, and I did some other weird party, and I stayed for like a week. And from there, I'd kind of started traveling a little bit. So like over the next couple years, I had gone to like And I was working with Red Bull and Scion, like back when those companies were really spending money and kind of like they had a lot more grassroots parties going on. So I was going to like Denver and Chicago and Vegas and just doing all kinds of random stuff. So I just started coming to Portland like every 3 to 6 months. Like Lee would have some party. Hey, we got this weird thing. And even if it wasn't that great of money, like I didn't care because there wasn't anything super cool happening in Pittsburgh at the time. It was just like very club oriented. Right. Like a lot of my gigs were just, if it was 2009, a lot of those gigs were like really Justin Timberlake and like getting into some of the electro-y dance music was kind of happening. Yeah. So, like one day somebody was like, "Are you going to move here? Cause you're here like all the time." and I had started meeting people. Portland was like the kind of market at that time where you could do a party, and if you did another party 6 months later, people would actually check, and they would be like, "Yo, my name is Becky, and I saw you at Massive, and you played some really cool reggae." And like 6 months later, she'd be like, "Hey, we're friends on MySpace. I'm Becky. I was at the last." It was like really, really cool. Like, and people were like, "Oh, if you're in a band or something, you can really grow like a following here." So I had moved to Cali because I was working the marketing office at Scion. And a girl that I was dating at that time from Pittsburgh, same girl, she was moving to Portland. And I wasn't feeling the job. And, she was like, "What are we doing?" So I was like, "Well, I'm just going to move up there." Yeah. So I moved up here and basically ran out of money, couldn't get a regular gig, really wasn't trying to work at like the burrito shop. And to make matters worse, clubs in Pittsburgh were calling and being like, a guy that I had worked for before I left was like, "I'm opening a second place. If you move home, I'll give you Friday here, Saturday there." Yeah. The money was, really solid. So I just moved home. Yeah. Got my life together, just paid off some bills, and but I never wanted to not come back. Like I was like, I'll be back. I'd come out and play a gig occasionally, whatever. And then I turned 30, and my sister had a kid all in like the same month, so I just felt old. I became like Uncle Zimmie, and I had that 30th birthday, and that was the year that I pulled the trigger. Like I just. That was March, and September I was gone. Wow. Like I was like, I'm out. And, been here for almost like 3.5 years now.
That's what's up.
Yeah.
That's what's up. And it's funny because you are just looking around. I mean, you're here. You don't just live here. Like you play in Portland. Like people.
Yeah. I mean, I think the scene has definitely changed. I mean, a couple months ago, they published that article in Willamette Week or whatever about all the places that had closed. Right. Just last year. It was like 22 places or something. Yeah. I mean, I came from a city where I was playing 4 to 5 nights a week, making pretty good cash, plus like random Red Bull events and stuff, to here, which was playing fairly regularly. We didn't have as much of a club scene, but, we had our cool club scene. We had our Crown Room and our Holocene and our, Fez and stuff, to just everything is closing and nothing's opening. So like, I'm not playing remotely as much as this is the least I've played like on average per month in like a long time. Wow. But some of those gigs pay a lot more. Right. Some of those gigs are just really fun and they're cool, and you find other ways to make money. So I've got a bunch of irons in the fire. So, you can only do so much with your market. Like I could play 5 nights a week if I wanted to make $400 playing 5 times in a week, which is terrible. Right. I just posted on Instagram like an hour ago. There was an ad on Craigslist for a DJ that said, "I need a DJ for my wedding. It's 5 hours and we'll feed you, and I have $50." And I was like, that's pretty much where a lot of it's at right now. Is like. Wow. A lot of good, but it's still a cool market. Like we still get a lot of great shows. We were talking tomorrow, Carl Denson's here is doing a Run DMC show, and Craze is here, and Plattern's here, and there's still people coming through. So I love going to shows, seeing shows. Occasionally you get to open up for somebody cool. So it's still a great market, but a lot of things are combined. It's definitely not as easy to make a living if you had to, pay your bills solely off of DJing. It's definitely, you got to be pretty creative at this point, but And
I mean, with that, I've talked to a couple of people who are in the industry in different facets of the industry, and that has definitely come up in terms of where Portland is in the ability to support artists or art. So, I mean, do you think that that's going to change? Like you said, a lot of places have closed and not a lot have opened.
In December, I went to Canada, did a couple gigs for Red Bull in Montreal and Quebec City. And the conversation that we were having, me and some people from the States at that point, was Portland's going the direction of a lot of other cities where a club closes and another club doesn't open, but like 2 bars open. Right. So like you got your club that holds 300 people and has a pretty decent budget for talent and good sound and lights. That closes, and then you get like 2 bars that maybe book DJs like 3 times a week, but they have $100 budget. Right. So, and the guy in Canada was like, it's the same thing here. He's like, this guy owned this place. It was like 600 people. Yeah. He sold it. He opened this bar. They do DJs on Saturdays and they pay $150. Right. So I understand like it's less risk. It's less overhead. In some ways, I think it's a race to the bottom. I mean, I think everybody should try to make as much money as you can or as you're worth. But, you know, I think people's perceptions of value has just kind of gotten a little skewed. I mean, will it change? Will it jump up? I don't know. One of the things I talk about with people a lot is for something like that to happen, people have to be able to identify a certain level of value. So, you know, people don't ever really realize the value in a professional DJ until it's too late. Yeah. So I don't, you know, Chris Rock has this whole bit where he talks about nobody ever thanks daddy for anything. Right. Like, thanks for keeping these lights on. It sure is nice being able to see. You don't realize until the power gets shut off. Right. You don't realize that you have a crap DJ until he just doesn't show up on a Friday and you don't have a DJ. Yeah. You don't ever think that, oh, the guy was here every time and he was nice and professional in his gear and his music and everything, whatever. There's like a value to that. And I don't, you know, that's pretty common in most places, but yeah, I don't think people ever say like, you know, and one of the questions I ask in the documentary is everybody wants to say that technology has flooded the market and that's really just ruined DJing as a career. And one of the counter questions that I have is how much value do you think is placed on the bookers? So for example, if there's 5 good places to play in Portland, right? Yeah. And there's 10 good DJs and there's 50 terrible DJs. Yeah. Does it really matter how many DJs there are if the people that book the DJs at the 5 places actually care? Right. So like if your Klyph is one of the top 5 DJs in town and the bookers always want to book the good guys, you'll always have work. Right. Even if there's 1,000 DJs, you know, we're opening a new place, you know, you got to get Klyph. Yeah. Like I worked at this place in Pittsburgh and the guy was like, he called me, Nugget, and Bonix, the 3 like guys at the top of the food chain. He was like, I want you 3 guys. You tell me what night you want and what I got to pay you. Yeah. And he just, that was it. Like he was like, I got the 3 best DJs in town, like recipe for success. Right. And so I think a lot of times like people just, they want a DJ. They don't care who's DJing. Yeah. Their budget is predetermined. Like it's X. If you're worth more than X, great for you. Yeah. But you know, if you're worth less, then you're getting over on me. Yeah. You know, it's kind of like it's become one size fits all. So, will it come back? I don't know. Yeah. Do I care? In some ways, I feel like I'm just kind of removed from that whole scene. Like I've got, you know, I do a lot of private events. I do my good music gigs. We don't really have a proper clubby club, you know.
So let's do this because you touched on a couple different things that we definitely have to talk about. So, and I'm going to approach it this way because I'm kind of curious if this sparked anything. You wrote on DJZimmie.com, there was a blog post that got a little bit of attention.
Yeah. Got a little buzz.
The end of DJing.
Yeah.
Where'd that come from, first of all?
I always have a couple articles in like draft stage. So, you know, I have another article on there called like 160 songs, and it kind of walks you through like what a DJ goes through in a night, picking all his music and like the thought process. And I have a couple other ones that are like literally half written right now, and depending on how much time I have but the way a lot of those articles work, I get an idea. Yeah. The one I'm writing right now is called How to Use Email. And it's based on the fact that if people would just respond to emails in a remotely professional, remotely timely fashion, my life would be so much further ahead than it is. So, you get an idea, you write a little bit, something else jumps out. Oh, I'll put that in there. So I had kind of started working on how everything was kind of going down the crapper. Right. I just started drafting this thing. Yeah. But it seemed like the universe was just feeding me content. Like I'd hop online and there'd be some article and I'd be like, well, I'm going to put that in the folder. Yeah. And then a couple weeks would go by and like something happened one day. And I don't remember what the thing was, but it was like, you need to sit down and you need, and at the beginning of the article, I talk about the conversation I had with the DJs where they talked about quote unquote, the end of DJing. Right. Like I was just, you need to sit down and put this out because it's crazy right now.
Yeah.
And I actually, the story behind how it got out was I had it in draft mode. It wasn't finished. And I sent it to 5 guys to just proof it. And I was like, please, literally the email was, please don't share this. Yeah. 4 words. I go see a movie. I come out of the movie and my phone has exploded. Right. Like, when I go to the movie, I turn my phone off. Yeah. I come out, it had already been viewed 4,000 times in 2 hours. So I put it back into private mode. Yeah. Yeah. And then my phone exploded more like, I heard you wrote something and I can't find it. So I went home and I finished it and I put it out. But yeah, that was it. I'm not even patting myself on the back. That was just more like, it's weird that I said what apparently a bunch of other people were thinking. Because I got hit up from people literally all over the world. Yeah. Like, I got hit up from people that I looked up to that I'd never talked to. Like, I was getting emails from guys like Spinna. Yeah. Like, my man was like, you need to follow Big Daddy Kane on Twitter. And right. Big Daddy Kane and Spinderella were just talking about it on Twitter like they were having a convo. Yeah. And I'm just reading it like... And then at some point I was like, thanks guys. Like I just chimed in. Right. And like people that I had never talked to just were messaging me like, yo, on the real, like Clark Kent, all these, so I'm just happy that I had the same idea and I didn't say something that pissed all those people off right. or whatever. Like I didn't want, so, yeah, and I was trying to be not as gripey as possible. It was just like, this is the news and not the editorial. This is like, I
mean, so I would say this, man, even for folk who maybe are not real familiar with DJ culture, it's an amazing read on society.
I sent it I was at Pro Sound and Lighting in Portland getting some stuff together for a gig that I was helping like tech some sound for. And I sent it, I was talking to the guy that was helping me and I sent it to him. And when I came back to return the gear, he goes, man, he's like, if I could sub out DJing with sound men, cameramen, he goes, this is the same thing. He's like, the value system, we had I had this incident recently where this person that I was friends with, like, was like, you need to stop bitching about DJing and this and that. And I don't think she understood, like, if you love baseball, and you're a baseball player in 1930, and you're a baseball player in 1960, you're a baseball player today. There's a certain level of like respect and just appreciation for that as a profession throughout the course of history. And people love baseball. There are people that baseball is their favorite thing on earth. And what I don't think she was understanding is I don't think she had anything in her life that she felt the same way that real DJs feel about music or the craft and the way that DJing is their connection to music and other people. Yeah. So it'd be the same as if all of a sudden you wanted to watch like the, Major League Baseball, like All-Star game. And they were like, yo, we had a raffle and like, this guy from this reality show is going to play today. Right. It loses all credibility and it's not respected. So the frustration a lot of people have is it's this domino effect of the credibility of the career, the financial aspect of it, just the downfall of like a lot of the music. It's a perfect storm of a bunch of bad things happen, much in the way that Chuck D describes hip hop as this perfect storm of technology, social economic situations, geography, race. All these things came together in a crock pot to make hip hop. Right. And you can't recreate that. Right. right now we're just at this convergence point of technology and music and popular culture, and everything's kind of just, unfortunately, like the career of DJing, the art of DJing is just kind of a casualty. Yeah. And, you know, I don't wake up in the middle of the night and cry. You just roll with the punches, but I'm happy that I was around at a time when I can look back and say, like, it was like this, and prior to me, I had heard stories that it was like that, and here's what it is right now. And, you know, in my interviews for the documentary, like, I just ask objective questions, and I get extremely positive answers. I get answers that are, I don't want to say negative, but they're very realistic answers, but people are sad. Well,
I mean, I think that you've done an amazing job. First off, I mean, the thing that we all have access to right now is the podcast, the X Credit Podcast. And so the interviews that you've done there, the DJs that you've interviewed on the podcast, I think you've done that. I mean, you've interviewed guys who've been DJing for years.
If you heard the stuff I have for this movie, I mean, and I can't. I'm cooking down the interviews now. We're transcribing it. I'm going to be posting teasers and stuff. It's an unbelievable amount of work that I was not aware of prior to starting this project. So I apologize for the delays. Like people are like, "Are you doing anything over there?" And I'm like, sometimes you do all this work, and what you have to show for what you just did is really minuscule. But that's a piece of the puzzle. Right. Some of the stuff that people are talking about is. Like, I'm actually mad that I didn't get to interview guys like Frankie Knuckles before he dies. Like, there's people that I didn't get to talk to, which is why, like, this year I'm pushing so hard to be like, when I go back to New York, I need to talk to Herc and Bam and all these guys because they're in their 50s. They're pushing 60. Like, this might be their last big interview, the questions, you know, and I talk to people when I'm done. They're just like, man, you approach the interview. Like, I interviewed Qbert. Yeah. We didn't really talk about scratching. Yeah. And he was so caught off guard because I think every time someone talks to him, they're just like scratch nerds. Right. And I wanted to talk about how he got to where he is through learning to DJ and playing parties. And he talked about all this stuff. And once he finished the interview and he saw the kind of question scope and he saw who else I had talked to, he could see the big picture of like, oh, you talked to that guy and his work in 1982, okay. So then that leads to the question, did you have the idea for doing a documentary for a minute, or was that influenced by the article? A bunch of people asked me, like, what are you going to do now? Okay. They were like, you got some attention, you got people's attention, what are you going to do now? And I had never thought about making a movie. But I thought about like, well, people were hitting me up that weren't DJs. Yeah. And they were like, I'm not a DJ and I had no idea about anything about this. And I go out every weekend and see DJs and this is the most interesting thing I ever read. Yeah. Like a girl that I dated that lives in Chicago hit me up and was like, my friend at work sent me this. She doesn't know I know you, and she's not a DJ person at all. Right. So, like, when it crossed over to the general public, I knew that A-Track's interview was great. Yeah. At one point, he goes, you know, people have really, as much as we talk about how DJing might be a little bit rough at the moment, there are some great perspectives. Like, there's some great things happening. I mean, the positive sides of DJing are also awesome right now. Right. And A-Track's like, you can walk outside on the street and stop somebody walking by and ask them to name a DJ, and they can name a DJ. You can stop anybody on the street and ask them to name a DJ, and he goes, that's amazing. Right. So the fact that there isn't a film that explains to you how Wolfman Jack in the 60s or whatever transformed into 70s New York City nightclub Larry Levan DJing, turned into Cool Herc, turned into DJ Premier, turned into some drum and bass movement in the UK, into Qbert, into Africa Bambaataa, like how all these parts of the tree come together to Calvin Harris making $66 million, to people producing, you know, on Sirius Radio, people making DJ Premier producing Christina Aguilera's album, like the world is so interconnected through DJs that it's this weird, like, things have never been better and never been worse at the same time.
Right.
And how these things came together, that's, I describe it to people as like, if you've ever watched a Ken Burns film, like jazz or baseball or prohibition, it's that. You're going to see everything. You're going to see how this little piece that you didn't think was related at all ties into how your 14-year-old daughter listens to this song produced by this DJ.
Yeah. Which is, and it's dope because, I think that's the thing. So obviously, Zimmie's making a movie. If you didn't catch on.
Yeah. So we jumped over that one. If you go to my site, you can find a link or go directly to thedjdocumentary.com. And I'm making a documentary about DJing, but not a specific one in the sense that it's like just scratching, just EDM, just battling. It's literally everything. It's like the way Ken Burns Jazz covered jazz from like slavery up to like the 80s, I think is where they left off. It's the same thing. So you could know nothing about DJing. You could watch this film and be like, I have a pretty good understanding of like generally how all these pieces of the puzzle fit together. And you can go farther down the rabbit hole. Like, oh my God, I had heard of Norman Cook, aka Fatboy Slim, and now I understand his connection to XYZ.
And it's dope because I can remember. As far back as I can remember, I would go to bed with my radio on, just listening to DJs. And I remember when I was when I was really young, listening to WBLS and listening to Mr. Magic and hearing of Marley Marl, and then for me, the DJ became. It was Grandmaster Flash, and I was like, okay, this is how this works.
Yeah.
And then, Jam Master Jay, and then, Grandmaster D, and like all these DJs. That's when I thought of a DJ. That's what I thought of was here's somebody who's a part of the crew, who backs the crew. That's the DJ. Yeah. And then obviously you get older and you have an opportunity to go out and see this live, not connected with a group, but this is what folk do. So I think that's a part of it that I'm looking forward to seeing is that's a part of that is that's a DJ, but a DJ is also the guy who is in the club. The DJ is the guy who is on the radio, who is at the wedding. There's all, like you said, all these pieces that come together.
You got music supervision for movies now. You've got. You go see Yo Gabba Gabba and you got guys DJing. And that's awesome. Mm-hmm. It's awesome. Yeah. It's crazy. Like I said, it's the absolute best and worst all at the same time. Like the opportunities for DJing are endless and the opportunities are also nil at the same time somehow. So it's crazy.
So I don't know. I think because you've posted just on social media some of the DJs that you've had an opportunity to connect with. Was that simply a matter of reaching out and saying, "Hey, this is who I am. This is what I'm doing, and I'd love the opportunity to connect"?
At this point in my life, so many things run through Jazzy Jeff's camp, and I can't thank Jeff and his manager Nicole and all these different people. But I've been fortunate enough in my career. One of my buddies asked me a couple years ago, like, "Hey man, I'm trying to build up my resume. Like, how can I get these clubs and get artists I've worked with?" And I was just like, you can't anymore. Like, nobody's throwing the party with the guy for you to open. And, we were doing Scion parties and one of my first really big gigs was with Nugget. We did a party for Scion and we opened for Jeff. Jeff was in the main room and Premier was in the side room. And we opened the side room. Premier went on. Yeah. There was a break. We opened in the main room and Jeff went on. And that doesn't happen anymore, right. And we did a couple shows with Jeff and we became cool. Yeah. And I met other guys through him and Z-Trip and these guys. And those guys have been super supportive. And it's one of those things where I'm like, look, I'm going to New York and I'm trying to meet ABCD. Right. And somebody that I already know is like, let me reach out to his manager. And, it's like if you throw a party and it's sponsored by nobody, well, it's hard to get a sponsor. Right. Well, then, it's sponsored by Sizzle Pie. Yeah. Well, then, okay. And then Uber jumps on. Right. Okay. Well, now it's easier for you to get Adidas on. Right. Because you have two other sponsors that are credible and, it keeps going. So it's a lot easier for me to get an interview with, I met Kenny Dope when I was in New York, and we had talked, and I had a connection to him from a couple other people, and people hit me after NAMM. So NAMM was a good example. We just went to NAMM.
Yeah.
I had shook hands with guys like Big Once, who was a Red Bull freestyle champ in 2013, I believe. And, or previously, I can't remember the year, but hey, yeah, we should talk soon, whatever. And I gave him a card for the movie. And the next day at NAMM, he's like, bro, I went home and looked at that site. That's crazy. So like when they go to the site and they see people that we just talked to, it starts to, it just holds more weight. So every time we add interviews to that. So this year is going to be like a big year. And then it makes it easier for me to, I mean, I have some stuff I'm working on in March I can't really talk about, but like if it pans out, like it just makes it easier for me to, I mean, everybody's down.
Right.
Like, it's just whether or not we can make things work. Like I was talking to people's camps in the UK. I was in Australia and I was going to go there on the way home and it all like kind of fell apart. But they were like, Jazzy B from Soul to Soul was like, come by. Wow. I'll put you in touch with Giles Peterson's manager. I'll put you in touch with Joey Negro. Like, and then once you get those guys, it's, I need to talk to Norman Cook. I need to talk to it just, and then at that point it becomes, well, you need to talk to me because I'm left out.
Right.
So
with something like that, then, what is the blueprint? Like, what does it look like? Do you feel like this is what I want the movie to be? These are the people that I want to connect with, and this is when I want it to be done, or is it I'm just going to keep talking to people until I talk to everybody? You know what I mean?
So
because it seems like at some point, you know what I mean?
So
the movie would never get made.
Yeah. So I ran into Kevin Scott at NAMM. And Kevin just finished the AM documentary, which is it's showing at some film festivals this year. He said it's amazing. So I'm really looking forward to that. And he's been really helpful. We've been talking about film stuff since this is his first film too. And, I kind of told him where I was and where I wanted to go. And he was like, he gave me some really great advice. He said, I know you're going to do this. And a lot of us know you're going to do this because we know you. But to the average Joe who heard about it, it's just an idea. Right. He's like, I want you to go home and I want to take everything you have right now and I want you to cut together like the 60-second like Transformers trailer so that everyone goes, oh, this is a real thing. Yeah. So soon you're going to see a trailer, not for the whole film, but up to this point that you'll be like, if Transformers comes out next year, you're cool if you see the trailer right now. Right. Transformers, May 2016. But you just go, did you see that trailer? It looks insane. Yeah. So we're going to start basically after I'm transcribing all the interviews and picking out the footage for the teasers and stuff. We're going to put out a trailer where I'm going to put out a trailer that's going to kind of give you a picture of where we've been so far. And then probably going to film for the rest of this year. And then we'll really have a better idea of, I talked to a guy that is involved with Sundance and San Jose Film Festival, and he was like, dude, I don't think you have like a 2-hour feature. I think you have like a 4-part like VH1 thing or like a 10-part. He's like, there's no way you can cover like 50 years of something and do it justice in 2 hours. Right. Or else you're just going to have 6 extra DVDs with it. Yeah. So, I mean, I talked to Premiere in New York for 90 minutes, and we only got to 1984. Wow. So, like, I know where I'm at with certain people and I know what bases I want to touch. Like there's things where I know, like I haven't talked to these types of people yet or these specific people. There's a lot of stuff we've shot that's just regular everyday people. Right. People that go out to clubs. Hey, what do you think about this? And their input and their perspective on DJing and DJs is just as important as, the guy that works for Sirius XM that whatever. And the guy that's been DJing for 30 years. Right.
And it's got to be crazy to say that this was something that, again, it was an idea that sparked it. You're creating sort of this new lane for yourself.
Man, like last year I was dating this girl and we met and like right away we were just talking about what each other of us was kind of doing. Yeah. And I was like, I'm like doing this and this and this and making this movie. And she didn't even know. And she goes, that's like too much stuff for one person, right? And I was like, oh. But and that's another thing that Kevin told me. He was like, we thought it was going to be this long and cost this much money. And 4 times everything we thought, we're still not done. Yeah. But it becomes that thing where you're either going to If you don't have time to do it right, you don't have time to do it wrong. So I could put out a crappy YouTube movie this year, or I could put out the like the Tribe doc was amazing. That's, the level of, we're going to cover festivals. We're going to cover, I ran into Maceo when I was in LA last time, and he was like, bro, I got you. I live in Florida. I'm sorry we haven't been in the same place. And, we talked a little bit about stuff, but De La's been around for 20 years, and he's been involved in that. And I know Paul and all those guys. So, and it doesn't matter if you're an EDM person or a scratch nerd or a hip hop nerd or just somebody off the street that saw it on Netflix and was like, this looks cool. I like DJs, or I don't know. There's something in there where it's for everybody.
So do you have a thought of what you wanted? Is it going to be, like you said, you go in and you ask these objective questions and you just get these answers. Is there a point of view that you hope to get across?
I don't. The last thing I want to do is ask the I don't want to say Fox News, but I don't want to ask the question in a way that gets an answer that I want. I just ask you a question. What do you think is the most important blank? What do you think is, tell me about blank? So for example, I have a bank of questions, but I kind of let things take on a life of their own. So if we talk about something and you kind of go down a lane, I'm just going to let you go, and I'm going to keep asking questions, and we can always bring it back in, depending on how much time we have. I did a 4-hour interview with Z-Trip. Wow. And right when we started, before I get into questions, I just say, is there anything you want to just say about DJs or DJing? Is there any, is there anything you just want to, and Qbert was great. He's like, oh, DJing's the best. He's like, you can make it whatever you want. And people have varied answers. Like DJing took me all over the world, and DJing whatever. And Z-Trip just went on for 20 minutes about opening DJs. And I don't know if that was something that just happened, but he just went for 20 minutes about opening DJs. And I didn't ask him. I didn't even say DJs. I said just DJing. And he just went. And that's just an objective response to the really general question. And everything from there, there's two parts. There's, for a guy like Z-Trip, there's his story of DJing, where he came up in the scene and how that all shaped his career and his perspective, but also his connection to DJing in general. As he was doing his thing, what was happening in the world. Oh yeah, and then I was 21 and I saw this guy. Everyone has those, and those are all connection points. So when I interview one guy and he goes, yo, I saw Jeff live at Union Square, and then I talked to Jeff, and Jeff's like, yo, I saw this dude and this guy, and you can start to see how everything connects. And that also tells me the deficiencies. We haven't touched that yet, and 3 people mentioned this dude, and I got to go find this dude. It's
an amazing journey to be on now, because of what you just mentioned. There are things that you're going to do that you didn't even realize that you're going to do.
The notes that I have. Thank God for Dropbox. The notes that I have are, when we talk, I make notes when I'm interviewing you, but post-interview, I have to hit people up and be like, hey, man, you mentioned these 4 guys. Do you have an email address? You said you had footage of this show. And that's a whole other thing we haven't even touched on yet is, when I talk about something with somebody, I got to go find source footage, photos, I can't just have a picture of their face. I need to see that footage of the 89 DMC battle live at Union Square, some crazy rave, some block party that's some historic thing, Fresh Fest in 84. Premier's talking about coming to New York. He's like, yo, Times Square was prostitutes and porn houses. And dudes was breakdancing in the street for money. That was there. Yo, let me get some money. And dudes was just DJing. He goes, I had never seen anything like it. New York hadn't gotten cleaned up. It was, crack was hitting and whatever. And he talked about Fresh Fest in 84 and seeing someone do something live he had heard on a record and not understanding it. And everyone has these little stories where you're like, okay, 6 people referenced this one show or this one record. Oh, you had that record too. Okay, well, let's talk about this record. Boom.
And see, you talk about those things, man. It becomes nostalgic to me, and it's like, wow. to be able to put, I mean, I remember Fresh Fest. I mean, that was amazing, bro, to see that, and I was in Louisiana at the time, so to see that crew of artists on tour together, again, something that just doesn't happen that way anymore. And if you get footage of that,
everything, every audio, video. You know, I was on last year when I was on tour with Pete Rock and Premier in Australia. This was the last show of the tour. It was in New Zealand, and Preem's road manager Keebs, super cool dude, was just like, we're in the dressing room, and what were they playing? They were playing like Run DMC. Pete was playing Run DMC, Down with the King. And he's like, I had this on cassette. My life is dope. Like, we were just talking about, like, you know, like I did that tour, and I was like, I could die right now. Like, we're good, man. Like, I'm watching Pete and Preem do like a James Brown birthday set because it was James Brown birthday. I'm like, I'm good. I could get hit by a car right now, and I'm good. Yeah. But it's, you know, all that stuff is just, it's all part of the puzzle. And I'm trying to not lean like too much on the hip hop and too much on this. Like, I want to talk to festival guys. I want to talk to club owners, promoters, everybody. It's all part of the story. I always say that everybody's connected to a DJ, but they might not realize it. Because maybe you got a kid and you don't go to the club, but your kid goes to the dance and there's a DJ. Your daughter gets married and there's a DJ. You listen to Sirius XM and you got DJ on there. Right. So unless you like literally live in a shack in the woods down south and you don't listen to music at all, I guess maybe. You've never heard music in your life. You know?
DJ Zimmie, man. So once again, for folk who are just trying to follow the progress, DJZimmie.com is the best place to do that.
I have some stuff on there. The documentary site, thedjdocumentary.com. It's called Soundtrack, the Story of the DJ. And you can follow on Twitter and Instagram there too. Facebook's kind of like jumped the shark. But, you know, the posts aren't as frequent as some of my other stuff, but it's a lot. It's pretty high quality stuff. Like as I get interviews, as we shoot stuff, like I post. So and there's a production diary where you can donate a couple bucks and you get access to that. And we have, that's where we have a little bit of stuff in there. We're going to start posting. So, you know, I shoot an interview that's 2 hours. I pull out like 5 minutes of audio and video. We'll throw a little thing in there so you can kind of see like, oh, okay, here's 5 minutes with J Period talking about making a mixtape with like Q-Tip. And here's 5 minutes of Jeff at his studio at his house. And here's 5 minutes of, you know, Danny Krivit talking about meeting James Brown at Polydor Studios and like how that, you know, record pools in New York in the 80s and stuff like. It's crazy. So when you see these little snippets, like that'll be the things that people are excited. Like, yo, there was another snippet, and he showed, you know, whatever Mixmaster Mike talking about, boom. And I went to a festival and we talked to, you know, Benny Benassi about, boom. Whatever. It's crazy.
All right. So obviously that's taking up a chunk of your time.
That's taking up a lot of time and whatever leftover time I have. So like if I had nothing to do and I was working on this full time, I might be caught up. Like if tomorrow someone was like, I'm paying all your bills, you ain't got to go to work, you ain't got to do anything. I might catch up. So it's just, I've got a couple friends now that are helping, which is great. So I can like kind of delegate some stuff. So luckily, when I went to New York, that was September. I shot 4 interviews a day for 5 days. So just going through that content was like crazy. So like, luckily I don't shoot an interview every day or else I'd be, you know.
You'd really be under.
Yeah, I'd be under. So like I can kind of start to chip away at the iceberg. So
that's what's up. So the reason I asked that though is because, and you said that you and Cusso just put together a piece, but are we going to continue to get the mixes? You know, I mean, and that's the other thing I want to let you know, man. I mean, you got there's some crazy mixes out there, dude. And the way that you put stuff together, I think, is like whenever I think of a DJ mix, a DJ Zimmie mix, the first one that always pops in my mind is "You Got to Grill."
Oh yeah,
like
so
the artwork and everything.
Thank you. I'd like to do more mixes, but right now I'm kind of operating in a little bit of like an emergency mode. So it's like whatever I have time for that's on fire. So there'll be a grill mix this year. I'm chipping away at another Footnotes. Which is like, you know, the hip hop samples kind of like discography thing. Those are the 2 big priorities for me. If I can squeeze something else in there, but you know, if I had a day off, there's no shortage of documentary work to do. And, you know, just lock myself in my house and make some coffee. And I mean, it's, you know, but it's great. I love it.
Yeah,
like, you know,
you're also like, so for folk who are coming through the Northwest or coming through Portland specific, I mean, you're doing some stuff on a fairly semi-regular basis. So you're spinning over at Saucebox.
I book talent at Saucebox, which I shouldn't even say that. You just edit that out because the emails that I get from people that want to DJ there are amazing. Like, I've never DJ'd before, but I heard you book. Like, it's so. Anyways, I'm there twice a month.
You know, I'm keeping that in there.
Oh my god! Like, if
the email is
like, the people that hit me up is just we're full. If you're hearing this, we're so full. We have more DJs than we can use every month. Please, just I'm good. We have our Motown on, and that's a great gig because that's the Saucebox gig is, you know, there's no real dance floor. It's just good music. So we've got guys that play, you know, funk, and we have a girl that plays funk and soul 45s there, and she's got a radio show, and we've got, you know, Rev Shines is there, and we've got guys that play like hip hop and house music, and we've got it's the best DJs I can get in there to just play good music, you know, no radio stuff, and it's a cool place, you know, have a drink, they got good food, and then I do a Motown on Sundays party with Rev and ATM at the Good Foot. That's every Sunday, and then everything else is just random, like one-offs, like, yo, can you do this party? Or it's a private thing, or like some kind of concept party. And other than that, it's just in the house working. Like, I try not to do too much work on Sundays, but other than that, it's like 12-hour days every day. So,
and it's funny because if people go to the website, like, and you have your schedule posted, and it's packed.
It's okay. I mean, what's even more impressive is you can look at my past schedule, which is, if you can go back and be like, oh wow. I mean, there's been years where I've definitely done like 250 gigs a year. Oh, wow. You know, and there's years where I've done 100 gigs a year. So it's just, at this point in my life, I much more prefer to do the quality gigs, and some of the gigs help pay for the gigs that I don't want to do. And I still travel. I'm in Canada in April, and I'm ironing out some of the details. I'm probably going to be giving a talk at UNC in April. There's a class they have there. They have a couple hip hop and DJing kind of in popular culture. Ninth Wonder teaches a class there. Okay. So I'm supposed to go out there and talk about DJing and the documentary. So stuff's still, you know, you do the work where you can get it, you know.
No doubt, man.
You might see me having a car wash, you know, and be like, come through, I'm trying to buy these groceries. Anyways, okay.
Zimmie's going to be all over the place, man. And then you talked about it a little bit on the Extra Credit podcast, that you may utilize that forum to kind of
it's tough. It's tough because when you tell a story, you don't ever want to walk into a room in the middle of a story and it doesn't make any sense. You leave before the ending. And that's kind of how it would be if I just threw up an hour of an interview without the whole interview, but I can't put up the whole interview. So, like, for example, the Cutso podcast, I shot video on that too. So if I need to pull a part of that out, I got video for it. Right. But that was shot specifically as a podcast. So it also depends on time. Yeah. If someone's got 45 minutes and we can't really get cameras set up properly, I might just be like, all right, well, let's just do an interview for a thing. Yeah. They're cool with that. And then when I go to their city in 6 months, I'll be in Chicago, let's talk. Yeah. Then I can do the proper interview. So I capture stuff for whatever's most appropriate. Yeah, yeah. If I got 15 minutes with a guy, I try to figure out like 3 good questions that I can just, but like, the 8-track thing was nice. We had an hour. Mm-hmm. And we got to an hour, and he was like, no, I got more stuff. So we went for another half an hour, which was great. Yeah. So that was like a good, we didn't cut the story off. Like, we got to a certain point. So
that's what's up, man. Dude, there's so much that to get into. I just, first of all,
dude, I didn't get anywhere to be. We're at my house. Okay. So,
well, one of the things, so just to touch on that, like, one of the things that was really cool to me was like going back to that night when you guys were at the station, was your appreciation, and I guess maybe some of it comes through from listening to your podcast too, but your appreciation and knowledge of music.
So
you are almost a bit of an encyclopedia.
Well,
almost kind of scary, but
in my opinion, if you ask somebody what is the most important trait that a DJ can have, it's just a love of music. Yeah. You should love music, all kinds of music. You should have a insatiable hunger to learn more about it, find more music, find new music, and new being music that just came out and music that you've never heard that's maybe old. Right. So, and that's just been my compass. Yeah. So, in a week I might get some new album that came out that's hip hop, and I might get some new electronic album, and I might get a blues album from the 70s and a jazz record, and and I tell people there's something in every single genre that I like. I might not like the whole genre, and some things might. Oh, it tells me my crock pot's done. We'll just let that go. I had to do a party last year in Pittsburgh at this museum, and they do at the Mattress Factory. They do this urban garden party over here. It's a fundraiser. It's 1,000 people. It's great, and there's always a theme, and everyone does the whole part. So the year before that was Motown, and we brought out the gaff, and everyone dressed up like it was 60s and 70s. And the year before that was something else, Alice in Wonderland or something. So this year it was Wild Wild West. So they said, look, we got a live renegade country band, and we need a country set. My girl Gina was running it at the time, and I played a 90-minute country set of renegade country, Willie Nelson and Dwight Yoakam and Johnny Cash and random stuff, and I mixed it together like a DJ set. I had made edits, and I had cleaned stuff up, and I had some ideas, and it was all just basically stuff that I like. Now, that might be in the realm of country, I might just like a smaller amount than maybe jazz, right. But it doesn't mean that there isn't something I don't like. You can play me music from, you ever heard music from Iceland? Nope. Yeah. But if we go through music, eventually I'm going to be like, this is what I like about this song. Yeah. And if you know Icelandic music, you'll be like, okay, well, let me get something else. And then, there we go. We nailed it. This is cool. I can mess with this.
It's funny that you say that, because I have this thing as we are sitting here talking.
You got some Icelandic music?
Dude, let me show you this. No, I don't actually have any Icelandic music.
I don't even know what that sounds like. Plattern's in town tomorrow, and he's actually from Iceland, so I'm sure he's got some.
Oh, no doubt.
Sjörgen Björg, no doubt. Whatever.
So in my tasks, I have.
Björk's from Iceland. So there you go.
Yeah, exactly. There's a task on here that says song. I don't even know what this means. The description is no more dating DJs.
No more dating DJs.
This is from you.
So here's what we're going to do. This is why audio is cool. So right now you're going to put in a snippet of that song.
No more dating DJs. No more dating DJs, MCs, producers, hip-hop critics, radio hosts, etc. Wanted. A girl to date a DJ. Must have strong arms for heavy lifting. Includes crates and my ego. Looks not important to me. You will never look as good as the girls on my bootlegs, white labels, and CD covers. But please try not to look uglier than any of my DJ buddies' girlfriends. I really hate that. Don't touch my equipment. I like music, long walks on any street that sells used records. Music, being a hater, music, and I do like music. Must be able to watch several hours of DMC World Championship video footage. P.S. If you've never heard of DJ Rectangle, please do not apply. I'm done with dating rappers, MCs, DJs. I'm looking for a real nice Rogers Cable guy who thinks the technique is a way to make love to me. I was in love with your potential. I thought your hands were speaking to me. Remember when we met and you were on that Jungle Brothers Back to Africa trip? You got me to throw away my rope chain. Even took the chemicals out my hair. You said you were my man, and we would be a strong black unit for change. But your mama's basement was too small to house the revolution.
Okay, so Klyph just did that. That was No More Dating DJs. I recommend the Pete Rock mix.
Okay.
There's a bunch of different mixes. Gemini does the spoken word on it, and it's just basically about girls that date DJs, and they're kind of over it, and they're never going to look as good to a DJ as like, you know, the girls on their 12-inch covers and the music and whatever. And, you know, like, it's a cool song. If you're a DJ, you should know that song.
Right.
So,
But the funny thing is just that.
If you don't keep a note,
Right.
if you're a DJ and you hear a song and you're like, oh, this sounds cool, and you don't make an effort to find out what it is, just stop DJing. And you laugh, but that's a real thing.
Yeah.
Girls know when I'm not paying attention anymore, and I'm like, you know how like a dog hears that noise that only a dog can hear, and they kind of like cock their head sideways? When I'm with a girl and it's like she's talking, and then I'm like staring kind of over at the ceiling, she's like, I'll wait. And she knows I'm listening to the song, and then I got to go and be like, excuse me, is this like on an iPod? What is this right now? And I'm like trying to Shazam. I'm in a restaurant, and everyone thinks I'm holding my phone up in the middle of a restaurant. But those songs end up maybe being an artist or a song or an album that become one of my favorite, and because it just stopped me in my tracks.
Right. I say
if you're a car guy and you're driving and you see a car,
Right.
you know, you see like a 70 Charger.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you're talking.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, I was going to think about going to oh my God, hold on. You know what I mean? It's the exact same thing. Yeah. But if you don't do that, you're not really a car guy.
Right, yeah.
But sadly, there are people out there, they're like, yeah, man, I'm totally DJ forever. And like, they don't care.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I'm on tour with Pete Rock and DJ Premier, and I'm playing my opening set, which I had basically made up this set that was like nothing really obvious, but like something from everybody they should know. So I'm playing like a Beat Nuts track, a Tribe track, a Wu-Tang track, a De La track, a Dog Pound track, a DJ Quick track. You know, I'm covering all the bases. And I'm just on the mic like, yo, if you don't know what something is, pull out the phone, Shazam it, come talk to me afterwards. I'll be at the merch booth. This is all classic material right here. New stuff, I'll play like maybe like a Kendrick song, and like a, you know, like a Action Bronson song, and like a Jay Electronica song. I'm trying to just give you like a sample of like, not like, yo, check me out how good I am at DJing, but like, if you're coming here to see Pete Rock and DJ Premier, these are building blocks either before or after them or at the same time. Like, and there were guys that came up to me. I'm at the merch booth, and they're just like, yo, man, you played props over here by the Beat Nuts. Yo, that's my, like when we get into it, you know, and the guy had like the Pete Rock and CL Smooth 12-inch that he was getting signed or whatever. And those are the DJ nerds. Like, those are the guys that, but there are also lots of people. I'm like in the front row, and they're doing like their Biggie set, and they don't know any of the words. And I'm like, you're at this show, you're in the front row, you got the whole way up here. Right. And I'm like watching and you don't know any of the words to Unbelievable by Biggie, which is, you know, that's fine. But like, are you Shazamming it to figure out? Because you should probably go home and get this record.
Yeah.
But that's, you know.
Yeah. And it's funny because there are folk who just like the music.
Yeah. It's got a jam, you know. Or music is not their primary, you know what I mean? Like some people are, I'm a general like culture guy. So like I love music, cinema, food, art. I'm not a sports guy. I like reading. Yeah. So, but there are people that like, they're not music people, but they're sports people. Right. Or they're not music people, but they got something else that's like their jam, and they're really knowledgeable about it. Right. So, you know, like I don't fault anybody, like that's just their thing. But for me and like for other DJs, like you just know like, what is that? I never heard that before. And that's kind of the, you know, it's a tester.
DJ Zimmie's up in here preaching. So just real quick, sort of, like, how did you get here, though? From, like, what was the thing that made you go, yeah, that's what I want to do?
Do what?
DJing.
Oh, okay. So I was running a skate park in Pittsburgh. I've had every job. I literally have had every job you can have. Like, when you're 16, you don't have to stay at a job. Right. So I'm like, I'd work a job for 4 hours and just quit. And like I'd call my mom, what's up? Hey, can you come pick me up? Where you at? I'm at the McDonald's across the street from the car dealership. Why aren't you at the car dealership? I just quit. You got to stop doing this. So I just, I did every job you could do. So I'd done a lot of work with bands and stuff like that. And music had always been kind of like an integral part. So I'm general managing the skate park. And this is right when like Red Bull started to kind of crack off. It was like, I don't even know what year. And I started working part-time for Red Bull because I was trying to save money for a house. And I ended up working. So Red Bull at the time, we joked it was like the culture vulture. Like they hired me, who ran a skate park, my buddy who was a DJ, my other buddy who was a breakdancer, my other buddy that was a graffiti artist, my other buddy that was a pro BMX rider, my other, everyone they hired was like a quote-unquote cool person or that cool job. So when we'd go out and talk to people, they'd be like I'd ride around with Todd Wakowiak, who was a pro BMX guy, and kids would be like, "You're Todd Wakowiak," and I'm like, "Okay, so like I get it." Like they're like, "You're the coolest." So me and Nugget, the dude that was a DJ, we'd always play this game. Like he'd come with his CD book and he'd be like, "Yo, have you ever listened to like Little Brother?" And I'm like, "No," and he'd like play it. And I'd be like, "Oh, that's tight." And I was like, "If you like that," and I'd come in the next day with like something else that I thought was wild. Right. And he'd be like, "Oh, that's pretty cool. You never heard Camp Low?" We just go back and forth like, "Oh, if you like rock, check this out." And like one day I literally verbatim said, "Man, I just wish I had a job where like I could get paid to like check out new music all day." Cause that's back when record labels had A&Rs that would like go out and look for bands and go to shows and like try to find new music. Like that was their job. And I was like, that'd be such a great job. Yeah. And he was like, "You should start DJing." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, like a big part of your job is like you got to keep getting music and stay up on music. And you always, you learn a lot about music just because you have to." So shortly after, we had ended up moving in together in this house with like, it was just one of those bro houses where there's like 5 dudes. And it's always like transient, like, "Oh, Jim's moving out, but Steve's moving in." Like all of our friends were constantly moving in and out of this house. Right. So he had his gear set up and I'd play around with it. So he started letting me open for him. So gigs were starting at 9. So I'd go and play from like 9 to 10 or 9 to 11 when nobody was there and just suck, play all the wrong tracks. And he had like, sometimes it would be turntables and sometimes it would be the little CD player, like 2 CD player jammy. Right. So I'd like burn songs that I thought I should be playing. And then like the next day he'd be like, "Let me tell you why you suck last night." Yeah. And he'd play he'd be like, "You played this song. Nobody knows that song at the club." Yeah. So then I started to understand like, this isn't about me going and playing what I want to play. I'm at a club. I got to play this Beyonce song or whatever. Right. So then he was like, "You just got to buy all that gear, man." So I bought all the gear. And I had to pay for it. So it was like, I got to get a gig. So I got to Tuesday night at Pittsburgh Deli Company. Uncle Ray got me a gig. And 10% of the bar plus all the sandwiches I can eat, which basically meant $20 and 2 sandwiches. And I just banged that gig out forever until one day I got like a Wednesday somewhere. Yeah. And then, you get a Friday. It takes years. Like at that point, like you didn't just... It's not like now when people email me and go, "I haven't never DJ'd, but I heard you have DJs and I want to play." Right. I had to like play somewhere for a year on a Wednesday to try to like play somewhere else on a Thursday. Right. And I remember conversations with Nugget, like, I think I'm going to ask for a raise. Like I'd be like, "Oh, word." And I'd be like, "I'm making $100. I'm going to ask for $120. Right. And you're like, "It's crazy." Yeah. Okay. And you'd stay there for 6 months. You'd be like, "This other place wants me on Friday. You think I can get $150? Probably. It's like the biggest place in town." Like, it was like, yeah. And just years of that, just boom, 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 boom. And then,
and now you're a world famous DJ.
Nobody cares about me at all. Like, seriously. Here's the thing. Yeah. Like, it's cool that I have like a podcast and I have some other stuff going on. It's still weird. Like I went to NAMM and one dude was like, "Oh, you got that podcast." And that was like, it was cool. I'm like, "Oh, I'm happy." But it was still weird.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's one of the things that, I think anybody who listens to anything that I've done, in terms of being media, social media, the podcast, the radio station. Everybody knows I'm super fanboy. You know what I mean? I just think it's cool when people follow their dreams, and then have some level of success with those dreams.
Sometimes you follow your dreams and nobody cares but you.
Yes, this is true. But you're still living out your dream. You know what I mean? And I think that's dope. And when I see, it's almost cliche-ish now when people say, I just want everybody to win. But there's a lot of truth to that. You know, I do want people to win. And so,
I think if you're doing things for the right reason, like if you're having a podcast about, what would be something cool to have a podcast about? If you're having a podcast about Volkswagens, right? And your whole goal is, just the most informative educational podcast about anything Volkswagen related, right. I think you'll be successful even if you're not successful by anybody else's definition. Like if it ends up being that, and maybe it doesn't make any money, and maybe it does. Sometimes it does because you did the other part of it. Right. Not, well, if I make a Volkswagen podcast, maybe I'll make some money. It's like you got to make it just to make it. Right. And if you when you try to make a rap album to make a bunch of money, I mean, you usually make a pretty crap rap album. But if you just try, like Jay Electronica can never put out an album for the rest of his life as long as he keeps putting out one verse every 6 months because it's amazing. Right. And I think he knows, like, people would probably buy his record, but I don't know why. So, like, if you follow your dream and your dream is just to have a quality product, I want everybody to do that. I want quality stuff. I want, I hate having my time wasted. You go on Netflix, you watch a movie, it's got like 3 stars, and I watch them like, that should have had 1 star. Right. I want 2 hours of my life back. And I don't know if their dream was apparently not to make a quality movie. I don't know.
And that it's funny you bring that up because that's another thing that I've gathered from talking to you. And you said like you're a guy who's into a number of different things, but like you was dropping, you got to watch this movie, or you got to read this book, or you got which is dope. You know what I mean? I don't know.
For me, and also that what I was just talking about, I have no idea what I'm talking about. Look, if you do something and you're just having fun. If you're just having fun and you're not hurting anybody else, that's cool. You don't have to take it super seriously. But, I always like that when it's always impressive to watch somebody who's really good at their job. I don't care what you do. If you go to the pretzel shop and the grandma back there is 70 years old and she's been making pretzels for 50 years, watching her make pretzels is so impressive because she's like Jiro dreams of sushi. She's just like the pretzel ninja. And that's great. There's also somebody that just loves making pretzels, and maybe they kind of suck at it, but good for them. Right. Now, as long as you're not making pretzels that are like in the shape of a swastika, I'm cool with you just doing whatever you want with pretzels. Like, just have fun. The culture thing for me, like all this stuff is, it's learning. So. I listen to a podcast and somebody might have this nugget of information that's like, oh, that's really good life advice, or that's a really cool way of looking at a situation. Or you watch a movie and they tackle a situation that maybe you've been familiar with in life and you're like, oh, that's cool. Right. Or, you read a book and you're like, oh, I really identify with this character and how that worked out. I wonder if I can change my situation. Yeah. So, that's... I've been watching as much movie stuff as I can, so I'm watching how they made Lord of the Rings, and I'm kind of seeing like the behind the scenes stuff. But listening to how people try to interpret different works of writing into like modern day situations is kind of interesting. Like, music's the same thing. People write a love song. There's all different kinds of love songs, and maybe there's one that's like, man, that was me and that girl, but this one's me and this girl, and this is a happy song. It's me and that person. Yeah. Songs about people's moms and families. Or you just make a song about absolutely nothing.
Which
Sometimes you're at the club and the song you need to hear is in the club.
Right.
That doesn't mean it's a bad song. Right. It's just it doesn't have anything to do with your mom.
Yeah.
It's just it's for the club.
Exactly.
Because that's where you're at.
Exactly. All right. That's enough.